how many babies were born today in Gaza? We forget the smallest things. How many babies were born yesterday? I know there are 500 children killed in the last week in Gaza, but there are still some being born. What life will those kids have? 1 out of 5 children in Palestine, mostly, of course, in Gaza, do not make it to the age of 5. The great Black abolitionist Ruth Wilson Gilmore calls this, in her research, state-sanctioned premature death. Do we speak about these things?
I wanted to have you on today, Fady, because I think it's so important to speak about these things and to hear about the history and to hear about what people are experiencing on the ground. And it is such a young population as well, as you referenced. Tell me more about, there's so little visibility people have in the U.S. audience of what the conditions are on the ground. What does it look like for people there now? What are they experiencing?
I want to ask you, I don't want to wax tragic about the situation that is beyond words. The pictures are there. Why are they not on the US media? You know, I'm a father, and we talk about bullying, you know, when the kids grow up. We talk about bullying on social media. We talk about bullying in, you know, physically in schools and what have you. Is this not what Palestinians endure in the US when their Instagram accounts are canceled, or God knows where else on social media, or the lack of visibility that we have even in the news? Well, they're available. I'm watching Al Jazeera and other news channels, and I'm getting all the photos. Why can't other Americans get them? Why can't they just get, why do they have to get this just one Palestinian who is grieving so that the message comes across? I mean, who of us knows what it's like to lose everything in a second? Now, of course, many of us do, yes, all across the world. But really, to have an entire population lose their security, shelter, an idea of survival. There's an expression in Arabic called to die in a group, to die in a collective is a mercy. This is a kind of an anthropologic moment. People come up with proverbs. Humans have come up with proverbs from these kinds of experiences from a small collective. But to get to the point in the 20th century where one actually lives the meaning of those words, that the Palestinians, what they experience as one, that my grief is not individual, it is a collective, and that we are dealing with this notion of a collective death, not a collective punishment. This is not collective punishment. This is collective death. I want to salute the Jewish people who went out to demonstrate against the Palestinian genocide, as they called it yesterday in New York, because it is an attritional genocide. And I wish them more. I wish that they grow in number, and I wish them to grow in love, as I know they have it.
Well, we wanted to have you on today because we do want to hear about it, and we do want to show the photos, and we do want to have real conversations about what is happening in Gaza right now. And we don't want that to be talked over, and that's why we want to have this discussion. What else should we know that you wish the American people would know about the conditions on the ground, about what you're experiencing, about what your loved ones are experiencing?
I think that people should know that aid workers are being targeted by the Israeli army, including physicians, ambulance drivers, hospitals, those who want to move the rubble and search for the dead. The Palestinians cannot bury their dead, nor can they count them now. I want them to know that I want to be there's no shame in saying this. There are dogs in Gaza. There are donkeys. There are cats. My dog has diabetes, gets his insulin. Are the diabetics in Gaza getting their insulin? Where is the medical community in America? Where is are, when will we recognize that we have not seen the Palestinians as equal human beings for decades? When will this farce stop? And I want to ask another question. For the last few months, American media has been so concerned about the most right-wing government in Israel. Some have come out and said, I will now call my Israeli, friends or colleagues or people, whatever, this is apartheid. Others have said it's fascist. And there's been all this political pushback from American media, from Jewish American institutions. And suddenly, over one night, we are willing to trust the fabricated lies, shake hands with them in an instant, where the American administration speaks a language that sanctions the murder of Palestinians. We can say anything you want about Hamas and all this language. We have said it before about the PLO. We have said it before about Yasser Arafat. It never stops. We have said it about nonviolent movements in the West Bank also before. I don't understand, when will we stop and just equal humanity for Palestinians is, I'll say it again, I've said it before, unthinkable for those who are pro-Israel, blindly Zionist thinking supporters. Equal humanity is unthinkable. If we truly begin from that standpoint, that Palestinian lives are equal to Israeli lives, peace will happen in a week, but it is unthinkable. And we construct so much language around the diffusion of the possibility that the American audience and society receives the Palestinians as equal human beings, and it just walks out of our mind, dissipates, if it ever enters it.